All right, we are going to go ahead and get started with today's webinar. So, thank you again, everyone, for joining us today. This is another in a continuing series of our webinars on DBE. So, this one we will be talking about completing DBE recertification and then what? So, on to the next slide. We will be discussing an update on state-by-state reevaluation. Then we'll give you 10 common misconceptions with recertification reevaluation. And we'll respond to each of those with 10 realities. Then we'll talk a bit about the path forward, and we will finish up, as usual, with some time for questions and discussion. So I am Dr. Nicole Yates. I'm a senior consultant with Keen Independent Research, and I will be moderating the discussion today. We are here benefiting from the expertise of Dave Keen and Mara Rosales. So Dave Keen is the founding principal of Keen Independent. He has been a leader in the DBE and MBE program design and defense for nearly 40 years. He's worked with countless state DOTs, transit agencies, and airports across the country. And following the issuing of the IFR, he spearheaded a pilot program with Arizona DOT preparing personal narratives from DBEs. And he's interviewed tens of thousands of DBE representatives throughout his career. He is joined by Mara Rosales, who is the managing partner of Rosales Law Partners, LLP. Prior to founding her law firm, Mara served as the general counsel of San Francisco International Airport, where she oversaw legal strategy for major airport infrastructure and transit integration projects. She has extensive experience representing DBEs, and she and Dave have worked closely together on many projects throughout the years. So very excited to have them here again to share their insights. Okay, so we will have a Q&A session at the end of the content here. So this, just a couple of reminders as we get into that. This whole session is going to be recorded and will be posted to YouTube. Um, we will have discussion time following the presentation. So there is a Q&A feature that you can use at the bottom of your screen where you can type in a question and then we will read it aloud and respond to it. If you do choose to include any identifying information in that question, I will remove it as I say it out loud just to maintain anonymity, again, as the session is posted to YouTube. So just keep that in mind. But we will alert you when it is time for the Q&A period. But now let's jump into the content. Good stuff. Dave.
Well, thank you and welcome back, everybody. And if there's anybody new, welcome. We're going to be, this was the same title for our session back in May. So we called it Looking Past, Reevaluation, the June edition. So this is one of the slides that we showed back in May that I think people really liked to see. And so this was the status as of mid-April 2026. And we knew that Michigan and Michigan DOT in particular had completed the reevaluation process and notified USDOT, and they had gone through the process of developing an overall DBE goal, and we're back to setting DBE contract goals. So they had a goal, they had the reevaluation, the goal, the program plan, for all of the modes that they are responsible for, and then back to DBE contract goals using a DBE combination of DBE conscious, DBE neutral measures in that state. So that's from a little bit ago. Red is hadn't started the reevaluation process yet. And yellow, we're well underway. The striped yellow and green is notified USDOT that reevaluation was complete, but we couldn't find anybody in those states that had submitted an overall goal, or at least a draft overall goal at that time. So they were close to the finish line, but they are the third part of the finish line where they had both their overall goals and their DBE plans in place. as well as reevaluation, but they had not quite gotten there. They'd just done the reevaluation part. We think this is the world that as it exists at least a few days ago. We might be missing North Dakota, and there is a website that I'm going to give you in a moment that USDOT has put up because you kind of wonder if they're even paying attention. But apparently they are, and they're able to list the states where USDOT has been notified that reevaluation is complete. And so Illinois is among the states that are now green. And we gave them a green because they have prepared an overall DBE goal. And as of a week or two ago, the comment period on that goal before submission to FHWA had been completed. So don't know exactly where they are. They may have submitted that. But we know that the public comment period closed, I think, a week ago. So that's the state of the world. We know that North Dakota might be on there now too, and that this is based on some of the information from USDOT that we hope is right. But it's impressive to us that they actually have a big spreadsheet of who's completed reevaluation and who's not. The in progress, not started, nearing completion, all that is, or at least the yellow and the red is our information, and the green is somewhat theirs. So we hope that this is useful, and we'll keep you posted because we'll do another webinar and we'll have a new map. Here's your key because not everybody will. We'll make this PowerPoint available. Certainly the YouTube is going to be available, but here's your key to the colors. And our apologies if we got something wrong. That's very possible. Okay, so we wanted to give you an update today of since we last met. And but we are kind of turning it on its head a little bit because there are not a lot of states that are green, and we've been at this since October 3rd. So why is that? And what information can we give you today that would be helpful to maybe move the whole process along a little bit quicker, especially the overall goal part and the DBE program part? So in my assessment, I think the DBE, the length of time for DBE reevaluation for many states was just longer than you ever would have thought. So it took longer to start, and probably the most certifiers in the state that had to kind of agree on a process, the longer it took to kind of get underway to have everybody do this consistently. I think many states were surprised that DBEs did not respond quickly. And we found just a consistent pattern of, hey, here's our window for receiving applications. You got a couple of weeks to do this, or a month to do this, or 6 weeks to do this. And they kept extending that window based on how slow DBEs were to respond, and in some cases, just how few DBEs responded. And it takes time to review the personal narratives. We know in some states, some of the holdup is how slow the certification decisions are, especially when you need unanimous votes among the certifiers. So that has held some states up a little bit. Okay, so that, I think there may be a bunch of other reasons why that's gone a little bit slower. But we think that you're only over the first hurdle out of 3 if you've done the reevaluation. There's also the DBE goals and plans. Now, you can't submit a DBE goal and plan until the reevaluation in a state is complete. Understand that. But we are finding that many agents have been slow to start. And some of that is, when we ask them, so why haven't, what's your plan on a goal? And then sometimes we hear, well, we're not going to do this, or we already have a goal, or we don't need to do a rule or something that's actually factually incorrect from the person that we're talking with. Or we talk with them and say, okay, my organization thinks this. I don't think this, but others in the organization, maybe higher up than me, have these misconceptions of what the requirements really are. So we're going to organize our webinar today, the information in it, and the updates we're going to give you in terms of these misconceptions. And we have heard a whole lot, either held by who we're talking with, or they're able to relay, hey, people are a bit confused here, and here's the source of the confusion. So we're going to try to, cut through the confusion, and especially for people on this call, give you some of the answers, some of the tools to combat the misconceptions if you're hearing this from others that are slowing everything down. Because we are very, very concerned that there's not a full understanding that reevaluation is just the first hurdle. There's two more in our initial graphic. There's two more finish lines, the goals and the plans, and you can't go back to operating the program how you might need to operate it until you get over those two as well. So Mara and I are going to kind of tag team this and go through all the top 10 misconceptions. We actually have heard more, but we'll limit it to 10. And then what you can tell somebody if you hear one of these things and you say, well, no, actually it's like this. Okay, so this is a lot of words on a page. We're going to break these down into segments, but it ranges from, I'm waiting for FHWA to tell me something. Or I don't think the DBE program will be reauthorized, so we're not doing anything. We have to do the reevaluation, but we're not doing anything else. We're just waiting. Now, there's a lot of justification for waiting and seeing, and we just don't see that is a very helpful response. And then we get down to the bottom of about the level of the overall goals. And we're hearing just a lot of misperceptions about those goals, that they have to be low, or some other kind of misperceptions of what the goal process is and what it's about. All right, so we will repeat each one of these and explain them in the next few minutes, and starting with the top. I'm waiting on communications before we proceed. So Mara and I compared notes. I'm going to start. So you got the IFR, you got the FAQ documents. There have been no USDOT releases since then. Everybody that we've talked to around the country says there's either little communication, other communication beyond the IFR from FHWA, FTA, FAA, or others at USDOT about the DBE program, or there's been none. And part of that may be by design, and part of that may be just people that used to be in those positions at the federal government are no longer there. And when there is communication, is go back to the IFR and read it. it's like no, basically the two FAQ documents were go back to the IFR. It says this. We really meant it. So I do want to let you know that there is a website that we put on here that somebody paying attention at USDOT, because on this website, they will list whether a state has completed the recertification process, reevaluation process. That is either a yes or a no. So it's not that nobody's paying attention, but it is, if you're thinking that somebody is going to tell you what to do, we have not found that to be anybody else's experience. And that's not a reason to wait. You just got to go do it based on what you know from the IFR and the FAQs and what everybody else is doing. Mara, what have you been hearing?
Well, first of all, hello, everyone. Those, again, as Dave said, that have rejoined us, welcome back. And for the new ones, I'm Mara Rosales, as previously stated. My experience is mainly with the state of California, and what I understand is to the extent that guidance is needed or wanted from the USDOT, there's just not a lot of staff there. My understanding, again, anecdotally, there's only one individual at USDOT for the entire state of California that has many certifying agencies, and there is a coordinated effort within California to make sure that all the agencies are pretty much proceeding on the same page. So I do think the DOT is kind of just not even deferring; it's just permitting by default that the agencies figure it out. Um, so California is, I mean, the good news I can say for myself, I've mentioned before in these webinars that my law firm and my consulting firm are both certified DBEs. I submitted the personal narrative and the updated P&Ws as required, and just this last week, both firms were separately certified. So, yeah, I think that's essentially what's going on, at least in California.
So if you have somebody in your organization that's holding things up because they're waiting to hear from, in the old days, you would hear from these folks, but now you're not. Please tell them that nobody around the country is really benefiting from that, and it's time to move ahead. Okay. We also hear, I'm waiting because the federal DBE program won't be reauthorized. So why go through all of this? This is, I would say, in terms of frequency, we've been hearing this a lot. Now, we may have been hearing this before recent developments. So, Mara, please set people straight.
Okay, so I have to say that I was fearful in some ways as an individual, but also as an attorney that Congress, with the recommendation, of course, of the Department of Transportation and the Department of Justice, would essentially take the IFR, kind of like clean it up a little bit and essentially make it the new normal. I think a lot of folks were perhaps worrying about that, especially in light of the Mid-America uh, case that was pending in the Sixth Circuit. But the good news, I think, here is that there is a reauthorization of the DBE program within the need to reauthorize the multi-year surface transportation bill that's working through Congress. It's called HR 8870 here, Build American 250 Act. Basically, the focusing on the DBE program. What it does is it thankfully Congress is recognizing in findings which are necessary for any kind of race conscious or gender conscious program. It's not as necessary for race neutral programs, but I've always recommend clients to have findings supporting any kind of program where the programs could be challenged as preferential on any basis. So the good news is that this bill does have a set of findings. If people are interested, I can recite what they are. But the bottom line is that the Congress is acknowledging that, looking backwards to the program as they should, what's happened in the past. Have there been improvements? Is there a need for the program going forward? And Congress concludes referencing extensive evidence in the record that there is a continuing need to reauthorize the DBE program. So that's very good news. They focus on socially and economically disadvantaged businesses, as they should. There is no mention on the rebuttable presumption in the legislation. My sense of that is that's obvious that Congress wouldn't do that naturally, and I don't expect to see the rebuttable presumption in favor of minority and women businesses in any regulations implementing this law, should it be passed as is, because it's still pending. The Senate is still, as I understand, just based on my research, is still in the process of reviewing and hasn't weighed in yet. But the good news is that there's a foundation to continue and an intent by Congress to continue the DBE program for socially and economically disadvantaged individuals. And you see here on this slide some of the features. There's an aspirational goal of 10% for DBE participation. the limits there. I don't need to repeat them. Uh, so the certification criteria for determining whether an individual is socially and economically disadvantaged. And on this one, it does pick up um, the what's in the IFR in terms of, an individualized showing of social and economically disadvantaged status or experience. Um, but it also includes a reference that the individual can I think it's better if I just read it, that the individual can show social and economic disadvantage by submitting evidence that would support a finding of the type of discrimination prohibited under federal law, which would naturally include any discrimination based on race or gender. And so on this one, this is a difference with the IFR that is kind of a convoluted race neutral approach. So there's clarity here by Congress, which is great. It's including the references to race and gender, which in my opinion was always the case, but the IFR questioned that. So it's good to see that Congress is acknowledging people's experiences on discrimination based on race and gender is important in the personal narratives. And then just procedurally, if this passes as is, when it is adopted, there will be a period for the DOT to issue proposed rulemaking, right? And and a comment period, et cetera. And this last note on this slide, which I found kind of interesting, is that there is a consolidation of the Office of Civil Rights with the DBE and small business office. And I mean, I have if people want to know what I think about it as an attorney or as a manager, I can tell you, but it just seems like this was probably put in here at the request of the DOJ.
And just to clarify, that is the funding request. So that's not in the Build America 250 Act.
Right.
What we have at the bottom of the page is what the USDOT funding request for the next fiscal year is. So keeping those functions, but consolidating them, and call Mara to see what she really thinks about this. Okay, so if somebody says we don't need to move very quickly because that program isn't going to be reauthorized anyway, we're wasting our time. We hope they're not right, but there's very little basis for that opinion right now, especially since this has been voted out of committee in the House. It was, I think, a 62-2 vote in favor of forwarding this act with, and it includes a whole lot of things. The DBE program is just one of them, but the DBE program appears to be solidly in there at this point. So please have them read the bill. This is easily Googleable. You can get the text of it. And this might change in the future, but that's, everything is proceeding according to plan. If you wanted to preserve something close to, current status quo, I think this is a little bit better than current status quo under the IFR. There's a whole lot of stuff we have been told either the person who we met with believes this, or they're saying what somebody else has told them about why they're not moving ahead with overall DBE goals. Let me go over them. We don't need a goal because we're going to have a neutral program. That's not true, and we'll tell you why in a minute. We really need to have a small business program, and this goes with there will be no DBE program, there won't be reauthorized. So we're going to shift to the small business program. So that's what we're working on. We don't need to worry about the overall DBE goal, or we'll worry about that later. So that's number 4. So we don't need to do a goal now because we're programmed for October 2027 or 2028. We just did one. So we don't need to do another one. We've heard that. We're just going to give them our old goal. We've heard that one. And so we can't work on this goal and the plan until the recertification and reevaluation process is complete. And we've heard that. So you may have heard others say this, So to help you combat their misconceptions, here's our answers. All right, so you must calculate and submit an overall DBE goal as quickly as practicable. That comes right out of the IFR, because I wouldn't use that. I would just say quickly, as quickly as practicable after DBE reevaluation the state is complete. All right, so let's go through these five. So I have heard, because we're going to be neutral, we don't need an overall DBE goal. And that's kind of a cart before the horse. So the process, which is in federal regulations that you must follow, because you're a recipient of federal funds, you do the overall DBE goal, and then you say, oh, can we meet that through neutral means, solely through neutral means? And you'll do a split, a projection. What's the percent? How much of that goal? If it's 10%, can you meet 10% through neutral means? If it's 20%, you meet 20% through neutral means. If there's anything left over, that was always the only acceptable situation where you could use DBE conscious measures. So that's the bunk. It doesn't matter whether your program is 100% neutral. In fact, you've kind of framed this wrong. You won't know that until you have an overall DBE goal. What if your DBE goal with 30%? You probably can't do 30% through neutral means alone. Not that you would have a 30% goal, but there is no thing in the IFR about what your goal must be, or it can't exceed this. The 10% doesn't mean anything. In fact, it says that the 10% overall national goal is not the goal for you. Okay, so throw out the reasoning that if you think you're gonna be 100% neutral, you don't need a new overall DBE goal. That's fiction. The IFR does not say that. In fact, the IFR says something that completely opposite of that. Now, misperception number 4. We're busy on our SBE program because we're just going to we think the DBE program is going to be thrown out. So we're just going to do the SBE program as a backup plan, as a substitute for it. No, you need to, it's very much the same reasoning as number 3 above. The process is set an overall DBE goal. The SBE program is within the DBE program. It's one of the measures. So it's not a competing program or a standalone program. It is a very much part of the DBE program, a necessary part of the DBE program. You start with a goal, figure out how much you can achieve through your SBE program and other neutral measures, and then see if there's anything left. If there's anything left, then that could be the DBE conscious part of your program. All right, we have heard, oh, our goal isn't due until a couple years from now. Well, the IFR requires a new overall DBE goal now. And here's why. It changed the definition of DBEs and who's eligible to be a DBE and what the whole certification process is. So it makes sense for you to be able to operate the program, for you to have a goal that reflects what's in the IFR, not trying to just operate under what you've had in the past, because that's no longer relevant. If you hear anybody say that, just say, read the IFR. It specifically tells you that even if it isn't your normal schedule, you got to do it now. We've heard, oh, I'm just going to submit my last goal. And the IFR states you can't do that. You cannot simply rely on either the 10% national goal, your previous overall goal, or past DBE participation rates in your program. We've never heard anybody say, I'm going to use the 10% national goal, but we have heard the previous goal, and we have heard, I'll just look at what my DBE participation has been. And that's just not, it's never been what the goal calculations have been. It's a part of a step 2 adjustment, perhaps, but you can't base your goal on either your overall, your previous goal, or what you have achieved in DBE participation in the past. All right, and then we can't start on anything. We just have to wait till reevaluation is complete. There's nothing in the IFR that says that. And this takes time, and that we've been telling people since October 3rd, plan ahead, because you're going to want to move on the overall goal and program plans as quickly as you can right after reevaluation. You want to, I joked on a previous webinar, have it the next day. Well, that's not realistic, but soon after you're done with reevaluation, be able to publish a proposed goal and program plan. And you can do a lot of the advanced work while you're wrapping up the reevaluation. So that takes a lot of our 10 top misconceptions and puts them, I think, to bed. Mara, got anything more on this?
No, you've
Good.
covered it. That's good.
All right, here's a graphic. We've shown you this graphic before. So October 3rd stopped a lot of things and directed the agency certifiers and recipients to start doing things, stop doing things and start doing things. So October 2025 to question mark, because some are still in the process. Some have apparently not started. Just notify the DBEs, prepare for recertification, and then do all the recertification, redo all the reevaluation, and then submit the overall DBE goal, and then submit the new DBE program. And then after you've completed all that, restart counting the DBE participation, restart DBE contract goals if that is supported, or launch your new SBE program or launch your new SBE program because you want authorization for that. That would be ideal if that were in your new plan. I asked one of our team members at Keen Independent to put together a slide on, okay, if you came to us just hypothetically and said, all right, we want to have a new DBE goal, overall DBE goal, how long is it going to take? And so we would determine the industries, the geographic area for the availability analysis. Our availability analysis is an availability survey. We have certain questions that identify potential DBEs in that survey. And then this has all been supported. We have piloted this, it works. Then you need to recalculate your past DBE participation because that's going to be important in both your step 2 adjustments and figuring out what your past neutral participation might have been if the DBE certification rules had been in place then. So of your DBEs that got through reevaluation, what was their participation in the past, not what your total DBE participation in the past. That's the way we see it. You need to do the base figure, step 2 adjustments, and you need to project your DBE conscious and neutral split of your goal. You need a public consultation process, and then you can submit your overall DBE goal program plan. That would get you to the end of the year, and maybe you can move a little bit quicker. We are in some states where we already have a bunch of data, but this is not an overnight thing. And the key here is, so it's complicated, and you want some information on the potential DBEs for your goal. So this is just a hypothetical, but we think it's not, you just flip a switch and you have a goal. You have to be working on it. That's why we say a lot of this you can start doing even before reevaluation is complete. Reality number 8. I heard this very recently, but I think this may be the case in more than one agency. Our agency leadership is deciding what our DBE goal is. We as staff just don't need to be involved now or not being asked to be involved. So we think that is a mistake. The goal isn't a political decision. The goal is based on relative availability of DBEs, or it's not solely a leadership decision without any data. That's point number 1. Point number 2, this is really hard. This is really complicated. You need data to be able to come up with your goal, or you're going to get a lot of negative feedback from the DBE community and others in your state. And USDOT has always required you to show your work. There may be fewer people still around that understand how to go through that and on the USDOT side, but it's always been a requirement that you can't just pull a number out of the air, and that would not be defensible. That would not, you might be putting your organization at legal risk in operating the program, or risk of not receiving federal funds as an extreme situation. So we've been working with agencies that at state DOTs and local agencies that have been responsible for developing overall DBE goals for years, and then figuring out the potential measures to meet it. In each one of those cases, Keen Independent wasn't making the decision of what the goal was. We would collect the data, do the analysis, do the math, and say, well, here's some possibilities. And that is a really good point to bring leadership in. And then they're making the decision based on sound information. So this is not a theoretical, hey, we just made up this comment. This is a real comment, and this would be our suggested response, where if this were your situation, trying to be more assertive and saying, yes, this ultimately may be leadership's decision, but we need to be able to help you, and it's going to take us some time to be able to help you. So let's authorize that and get that going, and then have an expectation of when that's going to be available to leadership to take a look at. Mara, anything else here?
No, just emphasizing the point that, the work has to be done, and the sooner it's begun, the better it is later for, obviously implementation of the program.
So it's complicated. This is a slide from a previous webinar session. So it's not a new one, but you have a step one, base figure, potential step two adjustments. You don't expect the director of a state DOT or another agency to even know that these are the requirements. And certainly you don't have them doing the math or trying to go get the data. This has to be in your overall DBE goal. You can't skip these steps. You can say, we're not making a step two adjustment for the following reasons, but you have to address this. And that's just not something that is appropriate to just pick a number without having gone through this. Finally, let's talk about low goals. So we have heard, and this is why it's been slowed down, the process, because just kind of admitting defeat unnecessarily. Our goal is going to be really, really low. And part of the hoping to keeping the recertification window open for DBEs to come in has been around, we're getting 25 or 30. I think we heard the best number we heard was 50%, but that may have been for ACDBEs in the state. And sometimes it's lower than 25% of the DBEs get recertified, but that's the range, and I hope that's a useful number for you all. And so they say, well, if we kept it open and did another training session on this, you're just not getting a lot of returns. So that's what's kept the recertification process from being completed in some states. So you just keep waiting and hoping that more people will come through. And our goal has to be really low. So there's one. Or we've actually heard something to the effect of, well, we don't want DB contract goals, and so we have to have a low overall DB goal. Both of those are simply not true. So there's nothing in the IFR that suggests the overall DB goal will be low. Here's language out of the IFR. It must reflect your determination of the level of DBE participation you would expect, absent the effects of social and economic disadvantage. That's very close to the previous language, and it is more inclusive. Your goal, all else equal, should go up, not down, because it opens the door was always cracked for all small businesses that might be facing social and economic disadvantage. Now, I think the door for non-minority and non-women-owned firms is more open than it was before, and it's more inclusive, and there's no reason that the goal should drop. And the size standards are not not causing your goal to drop. They're the same. Many small businesses should be able to qualify for the program. Okay, so you need to establish a goal first and then decide how you need to meet it, what you're going to use. And that's not thinking about, oh, we don't want to use DBE goals because we haven't in the past, or we don't want to do it anymore. I mean, the whole process is set a goal and then decide how to meet it. And I think not only is that the required thing to do, I think it's a smart thing to do, because when people will ask questions about it, or how did you even do this, you're going to publish a goal and methodology document that goes through all these steps. So you need to be able to do everything in the right order. You can't start with a goal and then work backwards. You've got to go through all these steps. And whether or not you're going to use DBE conscious measures is the final step. It's not the first thing you decide. So we think it may be possible to meet a higher overall DBE goal. Let's say you had a goal of 20% through neutral means alone in some states with some programs, but you don't know this until you do the analysis. So don't rule out that you can't meet your goal through neutral means and have that be a reason to delay this, or just think the goal has to be really low. And one of the anecdotes I heard is, so the big IBR project, building a bridge between Oregon and Washington State, that has a federal SBE program on it right now. And that's happened throughout the life of the IFR so far. And that's been very successful. Well, you can decide whether it's successful. I think they're getting, setting goals of in the range of 20% and being able to meet those goals for federal SBEs. Well, let's just say hypothetically you have a big project and you think, hey, small businesses can do 20 or 25 or maybe even more percent of this work. That's a really good indication of what your overall goal might be able to be, because you'll not have a 25% contract goal for small businesses if your overall DBE goal is 2% or 5% or 6%. Those aren't compatible. You don't need 20% goals on contracts to get to a 4% overall DBE goal. So that's the point we're trying to make there is, in reality, the goal should be higher, can be higher, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to go back to DBE contract goals. But maybe it does. It's going to be state by state. So we've had 2 states do this, Michigan and Illinois, that we've looked at. Both came out with a part of their DBE goal that needed to be met through DBE conscious means, but that doesn't mean it's going to be that case for everybody. All right, so let me talk about Illinois. So if there's anybody from Illinois DOT on the call, I hope in the Q&A part of this, you jump in and talk about it. Here's what we know, and hopefully this is all correct. The goal was 20.27%, and before the IFR, and the new overall DBE goal that was out for public comment through about a week ago is at 14.4. And here's how Illinois DOT did it. For the base figure, divided the counts of, I believe it's newly certified DBEs by the total number of firms, and did that for each NAICS code, and then weighted the results by the share of the dollars that were in that NAICS. So the NAICS for highway work was, 2/3 of the dollars. So that got a weight of 2/3, and then other things that were smaller got smaller weights. When you do all the math, you get to 14.4%. And that's only because DBEs were a relatively large share of the NAICS for highway construction and related work. DBEs by head count, not weighted, was about 3%. So that the 14.4 correctly is the product of weighting the analysis by how many dollars are in this NAICS code compared to the total. Illinois DOT did not include an analysis of potential DBEs in the base figure. When we were talking about it in our last webinar and going through Michigan, whom we had talked with, they had an attempt to look at potential DBEs. We would have done it differently, but they included it. Their goal ended up being lower than Illinois DOT, and I think it's because of that one NAICS code where their math showed a larger share of DBEs in that NAICS code. Illinois DOT did not make a step 2 adjustment. They considered it, went through that discussion, but did not make an adjustment. Partially because they said that they did not have information. Okay, so you have a 14.4% goal. How are you going to meet it? They estimated or projected that 2 percentage points out of the 14.4 could be met through DBE neutral means, and that was based on past participation. I think they were using information that they had and didn't recalculate that DBE participation based on currently certified DBEs. But that's the information that they had, and they went through the logic where they concluded that 12.2 percentage points of the goal would need to be met through DBE conscious means. So we conclude, Keen Independent concludes that they need to return to DBE contract goals based on this analysis. So this is hot off the press. Here's a copy of just off their website of their public consultation process. So they did put it out for public comment. They had a deadline for public comments. They had a session on this I think it was on June 15th. So that ought to be wrapping up. So again, anybody from Illinois DOT or from Illinois that might know about this, be happy to learn a little bit more in the Q&A part of our session. Been talking about potential DBEs a lot. What are they? Those are the firms that might meet the qualifications for DBE certification but are not certified at this time. And USDOT guidance, remember tips for goal setting, they recognize the inclusion of potential DBEs in the base figure. IFR didn't change any of that, so that's still there. In fact, I just noticed the Illinois DOT report, their goal and methodology document referenced tips for goal setting because they were talking about the need for weighting. So they're using tips for goal setting as support for how they were doing things and reference that. So for people who are not in the weeds and maybe have done the goals before, that's one of the things you look at to come up with your overall DB goal, prepared by USDOT many years ago, but it's not been, there's no throwing it out with the IFR. It's still there. Okay, so potential DBEs, good to include. They are those firms, it used to be, when we would do this in the past, a Keen Independent, we'd call firms that were potentially available for, say, I'll just take Arizona DOT as an example. Or I'll take Oregon DOT as an even better example. We call the firms in Oregon and Southern Washington State, and maybe a little bit Idaho, because that was the market area. Call them up and say, are you qualified and interested in working on transportation projects for ODOT? They'd say yes or no. They might not be interested. They might be in a different line of work. And then we would figure out who's a minority women-owned firm. We would figure out who's a small business and help them determine an overall DBE goal based on, okay, what share of the work, given what potential DBEs do, where in the state they work, what is their bid capacity, which is a whole nother webinar we can talk about, and and how do they compare to all the other firms in the survey that also expressed interest in working for ODOT, and where they work and what size of projects do they work on? Do they work as a prime as a sub? You take all that into account and determine the share of dollars that might go to DBEs, including potential DBEs, based on what they told us in the survey. Well, now we can't do that anymore because you can't base the potential DBEs on race and gender. So we have developed and actually have had results from an approach where we added a question to our availability survey about whether you are qualified and interested in becoming a DBE, certified as a DBE, and we add that to the analysis and only count those firms as available. And it works out pretty well because not all minority women-owned firms say they would want to become a DBE, but some of the white male-owned firms did say they wanted to become a DBE. And that's very much in line with our conclusion, and I think some others around the country, that these goals should not go down. And there's no reason that they have to go down. They could even go up or remain pretty much where you've had them in the past. Um, so, I think I went over all of this. Potential DBE is the way to keep a goal where you have it, or maybe where it should be. And please talk to us more about this because it's much more information that could be really useful to you that we don't have time to go over here. What's the path forward? Okay, well, we know the IFR requirements. You got to do the overall goal. You got to do the DBE program plan. You got to do it as quickly as practicable. I'm going to blame words like that on people like Mara because practical is just, I've never heard that come out of anybody's mouth other than an attorney. Mara, you want to defend yourself?
Well, it means as soon as you can. I mean, that really is it, considering all administrative burdens, that's what it means.
And then the plan forward, we're recommending is go through the step 1, step 2 of the goal setting, overall goal, project how much of the overall goal can be met through neutral. Go through that process. Don't start with a SBE program and work backwards. Go through the goal and then see how much can be met through neutral, including an SBE program. Include potential DBEs in your base figure calculations, and plan this out and tell people because you just can't do this in a week. This takes a while, and that's why you should start, which is the last bullet in the presentation. So good luck. We're here to help. Nikki, back to you.
All right, thank you. So I see that several of you have already submitted some questions and comments via that Q&A feature. So I will start reading those aloud. But overall, we are very interested in getting additional feedback on topics that we should have discussed and didn't, or any other overall questions or comments. So let me start getting through some of what we have, but please continue to send in those questions and comments as I'm reading these out. So first off, we had a comment that said that the Oregon reevaluation was complete at this point, so we can update that map.
And that's what the map shows. We're not aware of anybody in Oregon submitting a DBE goal yet, a DBE goal and plan. So you're not all the way green.
Gotcha. All right. This question is, are firms considered reevaluated or recertified once they successfully pass the reevaluation process?
That's a good Mara question.
Yes, but you have to have obviously notice from the agency. Yep. And I should say that sometimes I have clients that I've assisted on the personal narrative, and none of them have had their personal net worth question, but three of them, of maybe a dozen, have been asked to augment or refine or amend their initial submittal. So yeah, and some of those have been part of other, one of a multi-partner type business. So the answer is until all the partners, if there's more than one, have been cleared on the personal narrative and the P&W requirements, you're not considered reevaluated or recertified.
And related, is the USDOT UCP directory and certification reevaluation status the best place to monitor your state's status?
You would hope not, but we don't have any better suggestions at the moment.
I don't know.
It's better than nothing.
What is your perspective on using the existing USDOT standard that has race, sex, and other language about discrimination?
Could you read that off again?
Yeah,
Mara, I don't know about
Yes.
you, but I'm having a hard
no, no,
time.
no. I mean, I'm trying.
Yes, I could read that again. What is your perspective on using the existing USDOT form that has race, sex, and other language about discrimination? Yeah, there was a clarification there.
Yeah, form.
Hmm.
Yeah, if it's the current form that the DOT has on its website, absolutely use it.
And can I just say this is just a big mess, and it didn't have to be this way. And I don't know if I were in somebody's shoes, I don't know what I'd do. I mean, this is really tough because you have conflicting direction.
Yep. But it's their form.
All right. How can an agency calculate the relative availability of DBEs without the UCP?
So you can start on it. First of all, you can get everything set up, and you will, if you have a couple weeks left to being complete with reevaluation, you pretty much know how many DBEs you're going to have in each NAICS code. Um, so that's good information to start with. You might need to update it before you have your final numbers. What takes time is the potential DBE part of it, and that could have been started on October 4th. There was nothing in your way about getting data on potential DBEs because those include those that are not in the UCP at any point since last October. We know some states have been trying to move forward to do that. So, and we've been helping them with all kinds of roadblocks in our way. But that was the intent, and the plan all along is to collect that information. So you had that, and that going out and surveying firms about their availability for, say, a state DOT's work of different types and different sizes and different locations in the state. That takes a couple of months to do and analyze and have back. So um, that's what we're recommending, especially that you do that. You do everything else, and then you just update based on your final numbers.
Yeah. Do you know if states are submitting the goals in FHWA Connect portal or are they sending them to someone?
When we talked with Michigan, I think it was a back and forth with their local office. And it was a more informal process. I don't know if then it was formally submitted to the portal. I'd be interested in anybody who's been through this process, if there's anybody on the call that can answer that question.
Yes, please, if you have submit a comment, thank you. When calculating our goals, do we include primes that are out of state? Some of the primes working in state are 1,000 miles away.
We base our calculations on whether you have, not you're based on your headquarters, but do you have a physical presence? Are you a business in a state? And you define that as the market area. So it could be an international firm that has, a location in your state and is headquartered outside the country is an extreme. But so and the same for DBE. So if Mara had an office outside of California, we would be counting her as an available DBE in that state. And we often see that. They're multi-state DBEs, not just based on certification, but based on physical presence and actively doing business in a location. So we look not based on headquarters, we looked at as do you have a business operation in that state?
Great, thank you. And then related, we had some states are not accepting interstate applications. Some are saying they cannot until they've completed their own reevaluation. What are your thoughts? Can we use interstate firms for our goal setting?
So Marley, I think you have some personal experience with this.
Yes, so I mentioned to Dave in our prep session that not only had my law firm been certified in California, the home state, but it was Arizona, which is one of the states, the only other state that the law firm is um, certified. Arizona got ahead of California, by about a week. So some agencies, I think, are more efficient and they're just moving along perhaps on parallel tracks with first their home state uh, firms and followed closely by the interstate firms. But I was a little surprised that Arizona came first.
So let's say hypothetically that Mark actually had an office in Arizona, and say maybe somewhat hypothetically that Keen Independent was looking at availability in Arizona. So we would find her as an office. She obviously does work relevant um, to the state DOTs. I don't know if there's a lot of dollars of federally funded contracts going into legal work, but there may be some. So let's say we're looking at her NAICS code, and we would survey firms in that NAICS code and say, okay, so are you, I mean, try to figure out, are you a DBE now, or are you a potential DBE? And then what's the total? What are all the other firms that are not current or potential DBEs? So we would capture her, and it's based on whether she had an address in Arizona. And we would contact her. We would include her in the goal analysis because she had a business location. And that's the way we would handle this, even though her headquarters in her original certification might have come from California. And that's the way, one of the good things about looking at potential DBEs is with the kind of everybody finishing at a different point in time among the states, you're not reliant on certification of other states to know if a quote out of state DBE in your state is certified or not by their home state. Because if they're in your state and they have a location in your state, we think you ought to count them as a potential DBE. That's a long way. That may be really getting into the weeds, but we strongly urge people to look at potential DBEs, and this is just one of the reasons, because there may be, even when your market area goes outside of the state, which in many states they do, and many local agencies serve metropolitan areas that are on state lines, and they're spanning two states. Um, Looking at the potential DBEs solves a number of issues and correctly calculating your overall goal when you don't have final certification databases from each state.
Thank you. How can you tell the potential, excuse me, how can you tell the potential DBEs if SED needs to be evaluated? There is no way of telling who is SED eligible unless you do an availability study. Is that correct?
We think you can do an availability study and ask the business owner or manager this question. And we have done very similar in the past and had the goals approved. Um, so we don't see anything changing about the potential DBEs here. It's in writing from USDOT that you can look at potential DBEs, and we actually go one step further in being able to talk to people about do you think you would qualify for this, and are you interested in it? To be able to sort out, who would even, in the future, who might apply, versus, when they would know more about it, because really this focus has been on currently certified DBEs in the reevaluation. So going forward, you might expect more white male-owned firms to get DBE certified, or many minority and women-owned firms that haven't in the past may choose to do so. And it's always been valid to include a potential DBE in the overall goal, or at least since the tips for goal setting and the language about looking at potential DBEs.
Thank you. We had gotten a comment relating to DBE program size standards that says that the standard currently is 32.82 million, which was adjusted from 31.84.
Thanks.
Okay. The next question was how did they do outreach to DBEs, especially if it's not recommended to reach out to women or minority organizations?
Outreach for purposes of certification in the future, um, uh, it has to not target, solely target organizations based on race or gender. Um, so, it can include those, but it can't be limited. In terms of getting data to set overall DBE goals, we start with neutral databases like Dun& Bradstreet, Hoover's as a starting point and for availability analysis. I hope that kind of covers two possible interpretations of that question.
Okay, and thank you, Dave and team, for this webinar. Are you aware of any federal recipients that have submitted IFR compliant DBE programs and overall goals to FTA that have received a response where their respective UCP has completed reevaluation and notified DOT? I am aware of DOTs receiving response from FHWA.
So if the question is about FAA and FTA, and again, Nikki, correct me if I'm not seeing the questions in front of me like I did in the last webinar. So uh, uh, an interesting factoid is FHWA, nobody's been responsive, but in the range of being non-responsive, FTA and FAA win, and FHWA, especially local offices, are somewhat more responsive when you have something to tell them. Say, we're done with reevaluation. Here's our goal. Here's our plan. And that certainly was Michigan's experience. We have so little to go on, but that's been Michigan DOT's experience. And they have goals and plans for all of the modes, just the way that it works in Michigan. I don't know what Illinois DOT's experience has been, and there's been so few that have completed reauthorization, and only two that I've looked at so far that have completed the overall DBE goals and the plans. That's a really good thing for others to comment on in the session if they have something to add.
So Dave,
Yes. Oh, sorry, Mara, go ahead.
yeah, let me ask Dave a question. So are you saying that the FAA has been more responsive or proactive? Because I'm
The
not.
opposite of that.
Okay, all right, okay. Yeah, that's my experience. Is they're just kind of, the certifying agencies that I know of, the airports are not moving along with any great diligence.
Well, yeah, but it's the question was specific to what kind of
Yeah,
help are we getting from FAA?
yeah.
And it may be that they've set up that things go through FHWA, especially if you're a state DOT and you deal with all three.
Mhm,
And so my knowledge is based on this state DOT experience.
mhm.
I just don't think any airport is in that
Yeah.
has gone through that yet. So
Yeah.
the jury's out.
I'll make a note to check.
All right. So if anyone has any additional comments or questions to submit, we please do so. We've got no open ones currently.
We met with a few people after the last webinar and said, should we do another one? And we got a resounding yes. And then as a good researcher, I always ask, well, I know you liked hearing from Mara, but what are the other reasons you want us to do this again? And so if you have any comments that are like that, that's helpful about what are the things that you would want us to cover. What we heard was really good to know what everybody else is doing. There's really not a good substitute for this because some of the other kind of roundtables maybe not well attended all the time. And even if I don't have questions or comments, it's really good to have ammunition to go talk to others in my organization and say, hey, well, I was just on this webinar with 100 people that are, dealing with the same issues that we are, and here's kind of the sense of the group, or here's what Mara and Dave, their insights on this. So anything else that you can give us that helps us keep going with this and make it useful, please send us a line or just give us a note right now. Put it in the chat.
And as a note, we will follow up with everyone who has attended today with the link to the where this is posted on YouTube, so you can refer back to it. And then, if there are any additional questions or comments that you have, or you'd like to meet with us or Mara, then you can please take that opportunity to respond and do so. We can
Nikki,
set
do
that
you have
up.
a slide on that? If I advance the slide, do I go there?
There probably is a slide on that.
There we go.
I would venture a guess that, yeah, that slide that usually pops up about that is here. Yes, so all of those things that I just said, and also you can keep up with us via our company website and also with LinkedIn as well. We did have one additional comment that says, I appreciate this webinar because we're getting no communication from USDOT, FTA, or our state DOT regarding a DBE recertification process. I appreciate keeping this topic front of mind. Thank you. And then we had one more comment, our question, can you get a list of FHWA staff we can reach out to, preferably state by state?
We will, I don't know if that exists, but we will take a look.
Great. All right, so if there are no additional comments or questions, let me just kick this back to Dave and Mara to wrap us up for the afternoon.
Thank you, everybody. Keep your questions coming. Invite your friends to come to the next one. And again, remember that graphic in the beginning of all those finish lines. We hope you're really near or past the first one, and good luck on getting to the next two, the goal one and the program plan one. And we'll hopefully have a lot more experiences to share in our next webinar. Mara?
Yes, thank you, everyone. Again, the questions, very incisive. I appreciate it. Always allows me to rethink my answers and do a little more research. So I will be tracking this House bill, and hopefully it makes it to the finish line as we hope.
All right, well, thank you, everybody. We appreciate your time and your insightful questions. And look out for an email from us and for the next one. Thanks. Take care.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.